So it is 4:02. We have a lot of information to go through. Thank you for joining us for the very first outreach information session. We just started these for 2024. The topic being emergency management. My name is Damali Winter. My apologies, just noticing I'm not on video. Hello. I'm Assistant Commissioner with New York State's Department of Agriculture and Markets, and I am here in part of my role when it comes to a lot of outreach activities for the department. Just so everyone is aware, this session will be recorded. The intent of this is for this information not just to remain with those that attend. This information will be provided eventually on the Diversity in Agriculture website as a point of reference for pretty much anyone that needs it. So just being thoughtful with all of that. And just jumping into this, the first of just kind of knowing more about what is outreach, what are these info sessions, what are the other resources that we have at Agriculture and Markets, before jumping into directly with a lot of emergency management. And the big thing kind of need to know right now, excuse me, there we go. When it comes to just reviewing some of the resources that we have at the department that some people know, some people don't, but just making sure this winds up on your radar is this. We have two just key newsletters. Actually, we have more than that, but your big things to know are the Department of Agriculture and Markets has a monthly harvest, which provides a broad array of information specifically with agriculture in New York State. And also there's the AGM, and that's the abbreviation for the Department of Agriculture and Markets, AGM resource, aka Information and Opportunities. That is also a resource of information. It targets a lot of information that kind of flies under the radar for historically underrepresented, underserved communities. That goes with LGBT, BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, and people of color, when it comes to gender-related issues, when it comes to exceptionally kind of rural communities, things like that. So there's an opportunity for that. As the Commissioner says, agriculture is the world where 1% serves the 99%, and that Info and Opportunities newsletter is for those that are even the minority within that. Also, when it comes to website resources, we have the Department of Agriculture and Markets main website. We also have a specific diversity in agriculture webpage. Again, there's a broad spectrum of diversity in agriculture, so I encourage you to find out different information there that has a wide range of supporting resources specifically from the state and also from different organizations that provide very identity-focused resources. And those identities can include youth in agriculture, veterans in agriculture, women in agriculture, BIPOC communities, just a wider array, and that website is often getting updated. So please be patient and come back. We also have additional web resources there's a website literally just focused on beginning farmers and their interests and needs. It's a beginning farmer who just moved to New York State and says, here, I would like to be a farmer. I've identified land. What happens next? Or it could be a beginning farmer in the sense of, I've been doing this about 2 to 3 years, and I want to make the next stage when it comes to developing and becoming a larger farmer. So there are opportunities there as well. Also, when it comes to resources for ag and markets, the Great New York State Fair is under the oversight of the Department of Agriculture and Markets. I encourage you to see some more of the information there. I share these because government has a lot of resources, a lot of opportunities for the public to share, and ideally an effort to make your lives a little easier for a lot of the work that you guys are doing. That said, we are not the best when it comes to promoting and having people be aware of these resources and engaging in them. So I can appreciate I am moving rather quickly, and there are pages written out in front of you on a PowerPoint slide. Not expecting you to write all of these things out. At the bottom of this page, there is an email address, outreach@agriculture.ny.gov. If you can see my little hand icon. That is your default resource of here. I'm interested in doing something in agriculture. I have a question related to agriculture or what have you. That is your default email address. So if you don't catch all of the web addresses, that's perfectly fine. I encourage you to please reach out to that email address and say, here, I attended this info session and I had some additional questions. What was that website someone mentioned regarding beginning farmers? So there is a resource there. And before I forget, we also have one additional opportunity as well. We host monthly executive open office hours. That is primarily me hosting those. Those happen twice each month. Once in the evening, about 6 to 7, and once in the morning, 9 to 10 a.m. The exact dates vary because we want to make sure that once something is on the schedule, it remains on the schedule. But if you do not receive any of that newsletter, specifically the info and opportunities, the registration for executive open office hours are in those. So again, going back to that email address, say here, I would like to sign up to receive the info and opportunities, or here, I'd like to learn more about the open office hours. Please reach out through that email address. Just for a little more clarity, the open office hours are a time basically for the public to connect and find out more of what's going on in agriculture. There are newsletters flying around all over the place, so this adds a little more context to a lot of that information that you have, similar to what Paolo is doing, well, is about to do for his presentation with emergency management. But it doesn't have that opportunity to go as in-depth as we're going to do today. I strongly encourage you, pretty much everyone that's attended has found it very useful in their efforts of what they're trying to learn, being informed, and trying to figure out what next steps exist. So yes, executive office hours and registration is required. If you do not know how to register, or the next one, again, going to that website, outreach@agriculture.ny.gov. It's February 21st is going to be 9 to 10 a.m. and Thursday, February 22nd, 6 to 7 p.m. So if you want to put those on your calendar for the next month, there's opportunity there. With that said, all right, I know I just threw a lot of information at you. Again, I'll be popping on to the end, but your default for any information is going to be outreach@agriculture.ny.gov. And with that said, it is my pleasure to move forward with our main presenter here, Paolo Audino. He's the Department of Agriculture and Markets Emergency Management Coordinator. This is the person that, if you have a question regarding here, the snow has collapsed my barn's roof, this is the individual that knows how to navigate the system, or in first steps, what should you do? He is highly knowledgeable. Even in preparation for this, I learned at least 3 new things that I'm looking forward to sharing with different organizations. So I would say have something handy to write down for reference. Or again, of course, you'll find that I talk about that email address a lot, or he has his email address available as well. So with that, I'm going to hand over presenting to Paolo, and just give us a quick minute here. Well, here we go. Excuse me, Paolo. I don't know that. There we go.
All right, let me just share my screen.
So Paolo, I'm not sure, did it, excuse me. Okay. So Paolo, is your screen up? So I can do it from my end as well.
I'm sharing it right now. It's just taking a little bit to load.
Okay. So Paolo Audino, we're just, wonderful world of technology at this point. And I believe you all are muted on your end, but if you can confirm just via the chat, are you looking at Paolo's information session, emergency management in the agriculture sector? Thank you, Gabby, appreciate that. All right, and with that, Paolo, please take it away.
Okay, great. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paolo Audino. As Damali introduced me, I'm the agency emergency management coordinator for New York State Department of Ag and Markets. And so here's a little bit about me, just to kind of give context throughout the presentation. So I came over from the State Division of Homeland Security Emergency Services. And basically what I did there is I ran full-scale exercises across the state in the state's counterterrorism zones, as well as supported some of the state EOC activations in Albany. And so typically the state has a emergency operations center, which we call the EOC, which I'll allude to throughout this entire presentation, called the EOC. And so that's where my interest in Homeland Security came from, in emergency management. I was there for roughly 6 years, came over to New York State Ag and Markets, and I have been here since 2020. I wear a couple different hats at the agency, but for the purpose of this presentation, really my main function as the EMC, Emergency Management Coordinator, is to liaison with state, local, federal, tribal, and our non-government organizations within the agricultural sector on pretty much anything that has to do with emergency management within the agricultural sector. Being in agriculture, we have a couple of different support functions. And when I say support functions, they are within the EOC, and that will become a little clearer in the next slide. But for the state agriculture purposes of emergency management, we're part of ESF 11, which is the agriculture sector, ESF 6, which is mass care, and ESF 8, which is health or mass health. And so I wear a couple different hats as well. We do some cybersecurity events for the agency and a drone program. But mostly for this presentation's purpose, I am a resource and an avenue from our agricultural sector partners to the state and federal levels of government. So I do realize, and as I was putting together this presentation over the past couple of weeks, it became kind of clear through some interactions that it's kind of hard to understand the way state requests work as far as the emergency management system works within the state. And so this is the purpose of this slide. So as you can see, there's emergency support function 6, 8, and 11 listed on this slide. So being the Department of Agriculture and Emergency Management, we are the coordinator agency for ESF 11. So if you look down at the chart to your left, you'll see it's numbered ESF 1 to 15. And all of these ESFs are located within the state's Emergency Operations Center. So each ESF, each emergency support function has a different job to support an incident, to support a disaster. It's a recovery process, or its response process and recovery process. So for time's sake, if you just draw your eyes to ESF 11, which says agriculture, the responsibilities of that ESF, the responsibilities of our coordination is food supplies and non-human disease outbreaks. And I'll touch on that in a couple of other slides there. And mostly when it comes to the Emergency Operations Center within agriculture, like I said, we support ESF 6, which is mass care. And you can see all the agencies that are listed in there. We support ESF 8. You can see all the agencies listed in there. And we coordinate all of the agencies within ESF 11 to achieve the key mission areas, which is, ensuring food supply during a disaster should it be activated, and managing non-human disease outbreaks, non-zoonotic. So down to the right, you'll see a picture of the EOC. This is actually from the inside of the EOC, just something I pulled off of Google. The EOC is a lot bigger than that. During exercises, we may have anywhere from close to 180 people to over 200 people, and all the ESFs are activated, and we just go through exercises. We typically do those a couple times a year, and those are all managed through the New York State DISH's OEM, which is the Office of Emergency Management. So one important thing I do want to touch on, because we just had a recent snow event, multi-hazard event throughout the state where the EOC was activated. And I just want to touch base on how resources requests are managed. And so as you may know, New York State's a home rule state. So that means not only do disasters start and end locally, but most of the time the state needs to be requested to come in on a county level to support. And for an example, that is issuing assets or assisting county EOCs, county emergency operation centers and requests. So I have a chart up in the top right here that says this is the general idea behind how that works. So if you just imagine your local town or local city, it could come from the agricultural sector. If there's a mass power outage or there's a mass drought for a couple of weeks, typically how a request should work is it should come from the agricultural sector if it has something to do with that, to maybe an NGO, which is Cornell Cooperative Extension. And then what they would do is they would say, I need, my power has been out, I have to feed my cattle, I have a mass cattle barn that needs support, but I can't do that electricity. So therefore you could come to terms with, I need a generator. Then basically the city or town would reach out to the county if they don't have that resource available, and if the county Office of Emergency Management doesn't have that, they'll most likely reach out to the state, and that's how it goes. It's kind of a full circle effect, and that's how resources are requested, and then the flow is which they go through. So if the local city is able to support that, whether it's a water pumping mission from one pond to a reservoir within a farm, that typically could be done by a volunteer fire department. So that request would go from the ag sector to an NGO, Cornell, and they make the connections there. And so typically where I would become involved is when it's raised like a multi-hazard event like we had 2 weeks ago in early January and middle of January, and to kind of push things along or make sure that the people within the ESFs are made aware, triage anything, information that can be coordinated back and forth, and just kind of make sure everything goes fluidly. So the support of our farmers and agricultural sector is supported. So that's the kind of gist of that. And throughout, I thought this was important to kind of take a step back. New York State Department of Agriculture and Markets, we're an executive agency that we're also part of the New York State Disaster Preparedness Commission. And this is just important to know because there's 29 state agencies within this. And as you saw on the last slide, we're also part of different ESFs, and we're also part of the same ESFs, emergency support functions. And so that's really important because we meet twice a year as an executive group, but we also do exercises together within the state EOC. And pretty much the gist of this is the third bullet down highlighted, or not highlighted, but bolded. It's there's a lot of coordination and purpose between the state agencies and the state agency partners that they work with. And so this is called the Disaster Preparedness Commission. If you have some time on your hands, you can search that on Google, and they have a lot of resources as far as emergency management goes throughout the state. So you're probably asking, well, that's great. I didn't now know everything about the state EOC, how it works, how agriculture plays into that. But how exactly do we support the agricultural sector? And most of that done is, yes, through ESF 11. So through my role, the liaison role, we have annexes throughout the ESF that are basically plans put into place that involve different agencies within the ESF to combat a outbreak of plant pests, plant invasive species, foreign animal diseases, so highly pathogenic avian influenza is HPAI, foot and mouth disease, African swine flu, things like that. We also have a large footprint within ESF 11 for radiological preparedness, and so you can see the map to the right. Indian Point will soon be decommissioned, and that will be taken out in an updated map for 2024. But you can see those are 50-mile radius of our nuclear facilities within New York State. And we have a large response footprint and recovery footprint within that. We also have a document that's located on the DPC website. That's at the top right, New York State Radiological Emergency Preparedness for the Agricultural Community. That's something that I updated last year. We went through our federally evaluated exercise. And the two pictures underneath in the bottom are pictures of when we went through the exercise, which is evaluated by FEMA. You can see one of the FEMA guys stand there to the right. And our large footprint within ESF is sampling with DEC and Department of Health. And we would go to agricultural locations if there was a release from a nuclear facility, and we would sample milk, we'd sample grass, we'd sample soil, water, and all that is developed into different teams that report back to the New York State EOC and the Wadsworth Center. That's basically how we support the REP program for the agricultural sector in a nutshell. And a lot of what I do as well is we collect damage assessments, which I'll get to further in the slide, further in the presentation. But these are not all of our partnerships, but the main ones that I do work with on emergency management level for coordination, education, and just knowledge of what's going on through the state through different parts of the year. So most of that is done by the Farm Bureau. Cornell Cooperative Extension has their Eden program, and that's the New York State Extension Disaster Education Network. And of course, we have our New York State DPC partners as well. And it can be from anything from manufacturing to milk control and dairy. Our dairy facilities located throughout the state, for transportation through winter storms, so on and so forth. So just kind of adding to the technical support of what I was talking about before is our agency isn't a response agency. So when a disaster occurs, we don't have the resources or the personnel to respond to that incident right away. But we're there for technical support, whether it comes to information or ad hoc information that can be accessed by producers, the agricultural sector, very quickly. An example of that is recently during the snowstorm that I referenced, the multi-hazard snowstorm out west, and that covered most of New York State. So we issue a pre and post disaster information when it comes to governor's travel bans and road closures to our hauling network of milk haulers, other food haulers that have timely routes, or else the items they'll carry will spoil. We're also involved in the New York State Traffic Incident Management Program, which is the TIM program. You can see down to the right, I have a snapshot of our document there. And basically the outline of that is how we support the agricultural sector through the TIM program is, down the road a couple years from now, there really wasn't a plan for how to deal with accidents on the highway, throughway, and whatever roads, whatever have you, when they involved animals. So these are just some steps, and the TIM program is made up of, you can imagine, the DOT, state police, local law enforcement, wherever they can read the document, and state agencies that would respond to traffic incidents. And this is just kind of a checklist of how to, and something to be aware of when animals are involved, large animals. and things like that. So that's done through the TIMS program. Some other ways, there's something called the Fuel New York program, and that's only in effect for downstate counties, Putnam County and lower. And basically, that's managed through our weights and measures division. But there's an emergency management proponent of that, which is why I bring it up, is because when a large disaster occurs and there's major flooding and power outages, the Fuel New York program was put into place in 2014 to prevent gas pumps and critical areas where fuel needed to be accessed, so they didn't go out of power. So basically, what the Fuel New York program is, it's if you are a gas station owner and you're within a certain radius of a major evacuation route within the downstate region, you have to have a transfer switch and a plan for how you would deploy a generator to keep your gas station running, should there be a declaration from the governor or local mayor, things like that. So for food product, dairy-related incidents, and animal health diseases, we support that on a daily basis. In the New York State Emergency Operations Center, there's something called the New York State Watch Center. And the New York State Watch Center is staffed by 3 to 4 personnel 24/7. And so we coordinate with them, or I coordinate with them on incidents that occur on our thruway, highway, roads, of trucks that have milk or that have food, frozen food, whatever have you, that get in accidents and it gets spoiled, and we go through that process. And then also, when it comes to animal health and disease emergencies, we get notifications from the public through our Division of Animal Industry on whether it's a sick bird or from veterinarians throughout the state with emergency questions that involve animals that may be some kind of disease as well. Through our Division of Animal Industry, we manage the Empire State Animal Response Team, or ESART, and that's a resource for the counties in New York State to go to understand different trainings that would be made available to their CARTs, which a CART is a county animal response team. It's just a team that some counties have to be able to respond to animal incidents, whether an animal fell through a well, or a tractor trailer full of 20 cows gets into the accident. The plan behind the CART team is not only can they support small animals with kennels, food, and shelter during power outages and main disasters, but I shouldn't say all, but some CARTs have the capabilities for large animal rescue as well. And then I can get to that further down the road. So these are just other ways on how we support the ag sector through various parts of emergency management. And now I'm kind of going to get over to the preparedness part. So the preparedness part of it is important. So since I got here in 2020, there was a lot of eye-opening incidents when it comes to snow load, when it comes to extreme heat, and when it comes to tropical storms. And the reason being is it's just like we have our regular houses in place and our regular human sectors that we live in, the agricultural sector should very much have their own emergency plans in place, especially when it comes to winter weather plans, like, for example, power outages. What's the plan if there's a power outage and you're away from a location, and your animals, the automatic waterer doesn't work, the feeders don't work, things like that. Barn fire awareness. So we're in the height season for barn fires, and not only New York State but northern states, because that's when all the heat lamps get turned on, and all the heating elements, hay storage, things like that, have to be checked, which is very important. Structural collapses, snow loads, a huge issue in the state as well as northern states. Making sure certain parts of your barn are structurally supported. And should you have a barn collapse and there's animals inside and you're able to get them out, what's your plan for relocation? It's if you think about this stuff, a lot of times due to snow load, a structural collapse will occur, whether it's a greenhouse or whether it's to an animal barn, and the roads are terrible. There's a lot of snow. So these are just kind of things that should be thought through ahead of time. And when I talk about neighborly transport agreements, it's if you don't have the necessary capabilities to move certain animals to a warm barn, since you're collapsed, what people are in your area that can support that, whether it's through your local town or county, and then up through the state, things like that. So this year was 2023 was a very rainy season. So from at first it was dry, and then towards the tail end of June, throughout all summer, it was very wet. There's a lot of disaster declarations issued for New York State counties, certain counties, even in contiguous counties as well, which are counties that connect to other states. So my point of that is there's a lot of things that come into play when it comes to planning as far as mitigation efforts to floods. And a lot of what we see, even from a state level, is cleaning out water discharge areas, main agricultural sector, irrigation, cleanage, things like that. They decrease the effect of flooding. And so these are just things to think about as well. Tropical storms, they typically affect the coast, but we do see tropical storms that bring rain that have come to upstate New York throughout northern New York and things like that. So that's just something to consider. Extreme heat and drought-like conditions. I think 2 years ago we dealt with some drought conditions throughout the state, and basically there's a whole task force behind that. The state has a drought management task force, which involves DEC, other players, New York State OEM, and basically they monitor the water sensors, river monitors, rainfall, ground saturation, things like that. But I bring up extreme heat and drought because it could go hand in hand. But for example, what's the plan for during extreme heat? What's your plan for workers? Not only the workers, keeping them hydrated, keeping them and making them aware of different safety things that they could implement throughout the day to keep them cool. But what do we do with the animals? What's the plan if it hasn't rained in a month and the pond that's being used to provide water to our animals runs out? And just off the top of my head, I can think of that's where you contact your volunteer fire department to pump from one pond to the other, things like that. Again, it goes back to the first or the second slide where these start locally, so your city, town, and then county, how can they support, and then back down. So what happens when disaster strikes? So taking a step back immediately, prior to a disaster, incoming disaster, I should say, whether it's like a large tropical storm or a large weather event, typically what the New York State Department of Agriculture Office of Emergency Management does is we would reach out to our NGO partners, so the Farm Bureau and Cornell Cooperative Extension, and say to their regional directors and say, hey, this storm is incoming. Please just make your producers aware of the type of storm, what it is, and to act accordingly. So, for example, if they're going to get 3.5 feet of snow in the southern tier, there's a lot of things going on in the agricultural sector and farms that owners have to worry about, and maybe they miss a weather announcement and they could have restructured something in their barn for the meantime. So just little things like that we can help out on. And after disasters occur, if you see to the right, this is a intelligence summary from 2 years ago. And basically what it involves is a damage assessment of what occurred from a like a rain event or a large flooding event, a tropical storm. And typically we get this information from, again, from our NGO partnership, from the regional offices, the regional Eden offices and Cornell Cooperative Extension offices. And basically what happens is this information gets brought up to our executive office, and then if needed, it gets sent to the USDA, as well as the local FSA offices to make sure that they've captured all the damages that have occurred to the agricultural sector. Because what happens very much during disasters is sometimes the agricultural sector can be left out of even FEMA declarations. What I mean by that is each county in New York State has a disaster threshold they have to meet to even receive a FEMA declaration. But the state has its own threshold. So before a county can receive a declaration, the state has to reach their their threshold first. So I say that because that's where we come in to make sure that all of the agricultural data is added and is not missed. The flow of that information is on the top right. So if you just imagine a severe weather event occurs, the AGM, EMC, which is me, we canvass our ag partners pre or post. Sometimes it could be a tornado or something that happened that that the Weather Prediction Service didn't predict. So we can be reactive as well. And what we would do is we receive a damage assessment. We report this damage to executive staff. And if needed, if the information needs to go up, we do also report the information to the Deputy Secretary of Agriculture too. So that's very helpful. And so why is it important to submit the damage that occurs throughout the agricultural sector? Well, I kind of touched on it too. FEMA has their own declarations, but the USDA also has their own declarations as well. The different declarations offer different things, but also very similar things when it comes to emergency loans or SBA loans, things like that. And but one thing that's important to understand is, and I'll kind of touch on this on the next slide, is when disasters occur, as far as the agricultural sector is concerned, there is a threshold that needs to be met when it comes to damage or loss for certain programs to approve, to be approved for producers to register for them. And those are the disaster program funding opportunities. And when we talk about this, it's what is the federally assistance program? So currently, the state, we're not able to offer any assistance program from funding from disasters, and so this very much comes from the USDA office. And the way it works is, if you imagine a disaster that occurs, major flooding throughout a huge region involving multiple counties. So the request would come from a state official to the FSA office and say, hey, this is what our county, this is what occurred in our county, this is the damage. And then they would submit the damage in like database form, total amount of damage, what was damaged, fields, buildings, crops, things like that. And that all goes to the county FSA office. The county FSA office also gets information from around its county as well. And then they send that to the State Emergency Board, which is in Syracuse, which is the FSA office in Syracuse. They review the information. If it meets the 30% threshold, and just for the emergency loan program or disaster assistance program, then it's pushed to the national headquarters in DC for the secretary to declare a USDA disaster. So that's very like a 500-foot overview of how that process works. However, that process can't work if the agricultural sector producers within the sector don't submit that information. And there's a lot of reasons behind why people won't submit information as well. But so everything that's submitted to us is protected, and we don't release it to anyone else that is outside of the emergency management aspects for this exact reason, to make sure that the agricultural sector is involved in the damage assessment process. So the different types of there's one type of declaration, but the different type of programs that may be made available because of the declaration. It's the emergency loan program. So the EM loan program basically helps producers recover from physical losses by being able to apply and receive loans. They're generous, like repayment percentages and things like that. But for more information, I really encourage everyone to go to the website listed below. Then we have the Livestock Forage Disaster Program, and this is only kind of the top 5 that I picked. There's many more programs that you may be able to view, and I'll show you how to do that in a couple minutes. So Livestock Forage Disaster Program, that would involve a county or a large agricultural sector partner that suffered losses in grazing pastures or a grazing food they're not able to feed their livestock with. A livestock indemnity program that meets the threshold in certain areas where maybe mass fatalities or a disease outbreak where vaccines have to be implemented, so on and so forth. So a non-insured disaster assistance program, what that basically does, and again, there's only, this is kind of a key one for some producers in New York State, but that basically pays for coverage of production of non-insured crops that lost yields, that they lost their inventory, or even they were prevented planting certain crops because of a disaster too. And then we have the tree assistance program, and that's mostly for nursery tree growers or orchardists who incurred damage from their location, from their orchard due to a disaster. So if you bring your eyes down to the bottom right of the screen, you'll see I have a little picture of the disaster assistance discovery tool. And I very much encourage everyone to at least go to this link, and which is located at that website there. And this is an interactive tool that you can go to as a producer or a member of the agricultural sector to basically do a self-assessment of what happened. And you can see it's a 5-step tool, and it's very straightforward, very easy to use. And basically, when you get to step 4 and 5, you're provided with information on what programs that you may be accepted for based on the information you provided. So that is how that works. And so one also key thing I want to touch on too is, and I only have a couple more slides left, is when it comes to the agricultural sector assistance for USDA items, it's very important not only to report your damage to us through our survey tool, but the FSA office as well. Before you do any cleanup or before you do any removal of items or start rebuilding, because that all has to be documented before. And so I just kind of wanted to make that clear. Each office may have a different, based on their personnel challenges, may have a different process on whether they want you to send pictures or they would send someone to take pictures from the FSA, so on and so forth. So just please keep that in mind. So here's some preparedness resources that I put together for the agricultural sector. So starting off is, if you haven't heard of the New York State Citizen Preparedness Corps, training, it's a great training program. It's about 2.5 hours, 2 to 3 hours, and it's taught by New York State Office of Emergency Management along with the National Guard, United States National Guard. And it basically is a 3-hour crash course in how to prepare for disasters, how to prepare for what disasters, what certain disasters bring to where you live. And then also goes into details about active shooters, suspicious activities, or a suspicious activity that you could report and how to do that. And when you sit through that class, each family household gets a backpack or a go bag. You can see in the top left picture. So that's an actual picture of what's in the go bag. There's water, flashlights, a little first aid kit. I believe there's also like a dry brick of food that has a large shelf life, gloves, things like that, anything, batteries. And so I really recommend that everyone from the agricultural sector at least apply or find a training in your area and sit through that. It's very beneficial. And that link's located at the bottom of that bullet as well. So secondly, and I kind of learned about this 2 years ago when I was putting my agricultural emergency management hat on, but this is a fairly, I don't want to say new, but it's a program I don't think a lot of rural communities know about. And it's called the RF- program. Basically what it is a nutshell, is a rural firefighter mapping mapping program that allows certified RF- RF- staff to come to or local staff from you to come to your agricultural location and to come to your location along with first responders. So it could be EMS or your your volunteer fire department, and familiarize himself with the layout of your location. You can see from the pre-planning tool underneath, they use farmmapper.org. Basically, it's just kind of a drag and drop function that you can do to your agricultural location. And why is that important? Because if volunteer firefighters are responding to your location, some locations on maps, they actually only have physical fields. So you will kind of want to nip that in the butt right away. What is the actual physical location on the map of where the event's occurring? And this is that's another point behind the RF- program. It's just making sure that first responders can not only get there quickly, but when they do get to the location, it's the right location. And not only when they get to the location, that's important, but what do they have to worry about? If it's a large propane tank, if it's a large, biomass storage that could become flammable, explode, so on and so forth. So this is where it's important. An additional thing as well is it allows the first responders to come through and walk through your facilities, and just point out any fire hazards or any hazards that you may or may not have seen, and something that you can fix to for preventative maintenance, or something that may prevent a barn fire where you lose a whole structure and things connected to that as well. And so all that's done through the RF- program. And so I encourage everyone to go to the rf-.org, and they can download the brochure. And there is a guide or like a newsletter that goes out. I don't know if it's every quarter or once a month. So there's that. And then so animal response resources as well. So in the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned the New York State Empire State Animal Response Team. So if you live in a county that doesn't have a cart, you can go to this website and check out if not, your county does or does not have a cart. And if you're thinking about starting one, you can go here and submit a resource ticket to us, and that can kind of be walked through. They're all funded through their own county, so you would need your own funding. But when it comes to training, Like, for example, last year or 2022, we hosted a technical large animal emergency rescue training, TLAR, a training at the New York State Fairgrounds. There's a picture of participants wrapping a horse to be able to be pulled out of a ditch. Just an example of that. And that was a hands-on and classroom course for all the CART team members throughout the state. So things like that can happen if you reach out to the ESAR team as well. I also want to point your eyes down to the NFPA, National Fire Protection Association. They have I believe it was on the last slide. No, it wasn't. It's a downloadable checklist of barn fire safety, and it has about 30 different checks that you can look through. We also have our own checklist as well that comes from the Division of Animal Industry. If you reach out to the outreach at agriculture.ny.gov, I think that's something we can send along. And then touching on extreme heat awareness, and that's going to bring me to our final slide, which is our emergency management webpage. And the nice thing about this webpage is we put this together last year, and all of the information that I went over, mostly all of the information, is located on this webpage, including extreme heat. So if you're going to go to the extreme heat tab, there's a guidance document on so maybe things that you already do, I'm sure. The ag sector, a lot of smart people in this sector and successful farms and businesses. So you probably do most of the stuff already. But just if there's something that you're curious and like to review, it's there. And then so we also, one of the things that I found, and it's not anything against the USDA or different disaster information, is it's kind of hard navigating through all the programs, identifying which one you apply for, or even finding information on certain programs. So what we did was we kind of put everything together in this webpage. It's a one-stop shop, for lack of better words. For people within the agricultural sector, they can go and they can basically find all the information they need on FSA, FEMA, the Fuel New York program, as well as various producer awareness based on the season that they're in, whether it's winter, rainy season, hurricane season, so on and so forth. So that's that link right there, the agricultural.ny.gov/emergency management, and that will bring you there. And then lastly, this is my information here, and Damali, that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Paolo. And if you can make it so I'm the presenter again, they can see my screen.
Yep.
Yes. Paolo has just thrown a whole lot of information in your direction. I can appreciate that is a lot to process. Thank you very much,
Yes.
Paolo. Know that at a later date to be determined, this entire presentation will find its way to the Diversity in Agriculture webpage, but at least you have an idea of what's going on behind the scenes when it comes to the resources for emergency management. And Gabby, I believe you have a question. I want to make sure that you get a chance to get that answered. I just want to make sure also that just kind of some follow-up information in addition to Paolo's email address. You always have that outreach email address when it comes to any type of questions you have. If you do not know where to go, that outreach one is your default when it comes to questions. If you know that it's something related to emergency management, you have an emergency management email address for you. In addition to that entire website, know that we have additional information sessions planned. Next week will be just general of kind of like how government works, especially focused on state level activity. So if you know people that are working with kind of like a lot of policy, advocacy, a lot of community-based organizations, that should be pretty useful, hopefully on knowing what's happening on this end for a lot of those conversations. March, date to be determined. We will have information on the 2022 Census of Agriculture, and again, a lot of more more behind the scenes focus conversation on that. And in April, we'll be talking about environmental management, soil health, and climate. And again, that is a lot of information. Completely appreciate the need to follow up, but will leave with the resources to follow up, in addition to trying to be very thoughtful that people have something actionable. And the fact that Paolo has put me on to the wonderful world of there is Citizens Preparedness Corporation, and pretty much any organization can sign up for, like, here, we would like to host you to have a crash course in emergency management, and everyone attending receives a go bag. Like anyone that works with an organization, that's something to have on your radar. There are a lot of resources out there. So Gabby, I see you. I want to make sure you get a chance to ask your question, and you should be able to speak now. Yes? No? Hello? Sorry, Gabby. All right.
So I see here it says, what about the floodings in 2023 in July, August, and December? We didn't hear anyone from any type of support from AGM, CCE for any of the partners you are naming. So there was a designation through the USDA for New York. And so basically, like everything I explained in the presentation, that goes on in the background. And as far as hearing about it, what we do is we make sure the information is sent to the FSA and so on and so forth. They conduct their own assessments and they send it to Syracuse. If it meets the certain threshold within the county you live in, then it would get approved to send to DC. The reverse side of that, if there's a declaration declared by by Secretary Vilsack, what our office does, emergency management, is we share that with the county emergency managers. So we have a list of county emergency managers within the county. So what I would recommend is, based on whatever county you live in, contact your emergency management office and ask about a disaster declaration that could have been issued. Because if there is one for the county you live in, then they most certainly would have gotten it from our office or the governor's office on some level. Right. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for attending. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And thank you, Paolo, very much for taking the time, staying a little later to basically share a lot of this very valuable information. Again, this will be posted and available to all at another time. And again, we have another info session about government next Thursday. And there's just going to be a lot. There's a lot to know, and no one can do just one thing. So whatever you can do to join this and spread the word is appreciated. Also, when it comes to that outreach email address, a lot of these topics are from conversations with a lot of organizations. If you would like to propose a topic for a future info session, please do. It is welcome. And this is not just for you. Share it with a friend. We're really just trying to get a lot of the government information that already exists into the right hands for a lot of awareness. A lot of people are working very hard, and unnecessarily that could be redirected to a lot of different energy. So with that, it is 5 o'clock. Thank you all for your time and have a good evening.
Thank you.